Hello and welcome to the third episode on the adventures of the mighty Waterbucket. I was very disappointed with last week's loot, so I decided to do a little bit of normal raiding, where we got a little bit lucky and managed to get a fairly decent healing trinket. And by the time I'm recording this, I already claimed another trinket from the Great Vault, so the item level looks a little bit different than where we left off. We are going to start the week with an item level of 606, and we also managed to get 2 decent healing trinkets, so I'm already feeling positive about this week's progress. By opening the vault, I was hoping for a weapon or for a trinket, because by any means those were the weakest part of my current gear. The selection is not that great, and not so surprisingly, I will end up choosing the trinket, and we also get a Necrotic Wake 6 key for the week. For this week, I set the goal of trying to reach a rating of 2200, and I will also try to time a 10 plus key. We are starting the week with the Siege of Boralus plus 7, where from early on I'm really suspecting that the team is really not clear with the mechanics of this dungeon. The signs really starts to show at the second boss, where the tank stays within the AoE and dies, but thanks to a quick combat res we recover and take down the boss. The pools are really getting out of hands, a lot of overpooling, and at this point I feel like I can do absolutely nothing to keep the team alive. We end up wiping multiple times, losing a lot of our progress. So after all, we reach the third boss, we take it down. However, at this point, it's obvious that we won't be able to time the key. On the last boss, I find myself in a rather weird situation, where the team always leaves me behind for the cannons. Considering I'm a healer and there are debuffs to dispel, I'm really not sure if this is the right choice. The evoker in the group comes to the rescue multiple times, which is quite helpful, thank you very much, but I would rather have any of the DPS firing those cannons. After the last shot, the boss eventually goes down and we end up with a pretty nice upgrade. Even though we didn't time the key, I would still consider this a good start. The next one is a Dawnbreaker plus 7. I would like to spice up the video and say how awful this run was, however that wouldn't be true. Everything is spot on, not many casualties, and we end up finishing the dungeon for a plus 2. No any loot for me, but the spirits are high for the next one. Arakara plus 7. Arakara plus 7. Arakara plus 7. As you witnessed my outstanding performance, the group stays quite chill about my mistakes, smashing through the rest of the dungeon, and I must say this week has been quite smooth so far. We end up finishing the key for a plus 2. And now it's time to eat my words. As the previous runs were quite successful, and we already started the week with a few nice upgrades, I decided to increase the difficulty and only do 8 or above in the next runs. So here we are in a City of Threads plus 8, where the initial trash packs are already giving us a hard time. The damage is insane, the interrupts are probably not the best, and it's pretty much the same recipe until we reach the first boss. I'm still unclear of how the dispel should be done here, but that's not what will actually lead into our demise. The first big purple puddle is not a problem, however the second one. There is an unfortunate turn of the events. The tank taking its position indicating which way it's going to move. Some of the group members, including myself, follows, and in the very last second the tank decides to move a different direction. In the heat of the moment we didn't notice the change to the plan, so we end up wiping. Someone gets offended by this horrible act, leaving the group and ruining the key. I was really disappointed and I wasn't ready to give up yet. We were still well in time, so instead of getting offended and playing the blame game, we should have just carried on and probably finishing the dungeon for at least a +1. This is one of those examples that makes no sense by any means and just giving a bad reputation to the Mythic Plus dungeon and the community itself. As I wanted to complete a City of Threads dungeon for this week, I came back with a different group on a +7, not the best run possible, but we end up finishing for a +1. The next one is a Necrotic Wake +8. The first boss gave me a scary moment. The lesson here is to use the defensive cooldown. However, it's not that simple for the next section. The group really struggles clearing the trash between the first and the second boss. We managed to add quite a few deaths to the counter, but after reaching the boss, things go smooth again. There is quite a lot of time lost. However, the group is doing the mechanics well on the upcoming boss fights. Very nice group overall. We end up the dungeon for a +1, and I also managed to get another upgrade. The next one is a Green Battle +8. I was really afraid of this dungeon because of the trash pools being exceptionally hard. However, this paladin tank seems to be very beefy and doing a lot of self-healing. The run is going quite smooth and quick until we come across the Molten Giants. The boss fight is easy, but then there are the enforcers to teach us a lesson. Some cheesy tactics on the Valiona fight, corruption sending me to oblivion, but the last boss goes down, we finish the key for a +1, and I get my well-deserved trinket. Mists of Tirna +8. As you know, this is my favorite dungeon, so I decided to come back once again. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned that I'm quite scared about the first trash pool. However, in this instance, it seems to be going much better than ever before. As expected, the first boss goes down quite easily. This time, I feel more focused, but we can't say the same for everyone else. I was dedicated to help the team with spotting the clones, but at some point during the fight, the add-on covering the screen really started to disturb me and I fully given up using the add-on. This time the group is dealing much better with the guessing game. The dodgeball not all the time, but now my favorite part where the squeaky toy finally goes down and we are free to move forward. Nice and easy from here, we finish the dungeon for a +1. Jumping into Stonewall +8. We are starting the run with quite a big pool, but nothing that the team couldn't handle. At the time of the recording, in this moment I didn't make my assumptions of who is going to be the first one leaving the group. Someone didn't feel like to participate in the fight, but that didn't stop us to bring the boss down. On the next boss, we decided to follow the same idea, but then there was no one else to complete the job. Let's see a hint of who might be the first leaving the group. After the good old blame game, with the element of surprise, someone ends up leaving the group. Similar to the City of Threads attempt, Stonewood had to be completed this week, so I decided to come back on a lower level with a different team. We had quite a few deaths during the run, but overall the group was smashing through, so we finished the dungeon for a +2. I was planning to finish and wrap up the week at this point. However, considering that we still have quite a lot of time left until the next reset, I decided to upgrade my gear as much as possible and try to attempt a 10+ key. So I quickly grabbed a weapon from the Blackrock raid. I spent all the Valor Stones and all the crests, so we end up with an item level of 611. After waiting approximately half an hour to get into a group, we are finally in a green battle +10. Being the first 10 of the season, I'm quite nervous and I end up making really silly mistakes. I was trying to help as much as possible with the interrupts and the stuns, but that one definitely slipped through and it's not only on me. The dreaded Valiona fight goes relatively smooth until the second attempts goes much better, but we are going to pay for the first one. On the first Shadow Gale, I somehow get caught by the tentacle, and by miracle I live through. The boss goes down, but unfortunately we ran out of time by a whopping 17 seconds. There was one more dungeon on the list that has been bugging me, and I felt like it must be completed this week. Keep in mind, this is a +8, but I somehow have déjà vu, as the previous run, the group doesn't seems to be knowing the mechanics, or at least following it, even for the first boss. The run feels very slow and sluggish, however we are making progress. After the first boss, on one of the trash pools, unfortunately the tank DCs, and there is nothing I can do to save the situation. The blame game immediately starts without having any kind of knowledge of what actually happened. 3 seconds later, our tank comes back, but after these eons of waiting, the most offended one has already left. Some things just wasn't meant to be, I guess. Quite a lot has been done this week, and quite a lot has been achieved. We couldn't time a +10, but we finished this week with an item level of 611 and a Mythic Plus rating of 2226. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, leave a comment and hit the subscribe button. And as always, thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one.